ChatGPT is getting access to Apple's iMessage so it can draft, send texts, search through all your messages. There's a lot of people concerned about the security implications, but also a lot of people wondering what you can actually do with this. We're going to get into that on the podcast. Also, a bunch of detector apps are getting very popular as Meta AI glasses have this huge privacy backlash. So we'll get into that. And right now, there are 1,100 labs and AI employees that are asking US governments to help pace automated AI research. They're worried that it's going to get out of control and be hard to actually control what's going on when AI is teaching itself. Micro One has just hit $500 million in run rate as AI training demand is getting incredibly popular. This is a business, an area that I personally am working on. So I have a lot of insights into this. And also, every builds AI clone of their editor in chief from 30,000 edits. So every is a publication, and they built basically a clone. They had their editor go and make edits to all of the journalism, all the work that was getting published to their platforms. And then they said, hey, look at the document beforehand, look at the edits that they made, and let's tell the AI how to edit things. And after that, they were able to scale up from 30 to 60 people very quickly and actually have the AI doing a lot of the editing for them. If you want to get access to different tools and strategies on actually growing and scaling your business with AI, I mentioned this a couple of days ago on the podcast, and I wasn't planning on talking about this for another week, but my AI Hustle School community is growing super fast. And I mentioned in the past, once we hit 1,000 members, we're going to paywall it and make it paid only. And it is currently at 928 members. I wasn't going to mention it for a week, but it grew like a couple hundred members in the last couple days. So we're going to get very close to 1,000 very fast. If you're interested in joining the AI Hustle School community, it's completely free to join right now. You get access to over 900 people that are building. I'm going to cover how you can grow and scale your business using AI tools, but also how to build out software and apps, all the stuff that I have done, everything from marketing to actually developing the tool. So if you're interested in growing and scaling your business with AI tools, go check it out. There's a link in the description to the AI Hustle School community. It is free to join right now, but as soon as we hit 1,000, we're going to paywall it. It's going to be pretty expensive. Not expensive. It's going to be an incredible value, but it'll be probably somewhere between $20 or $50 a month, depending on what kind of promotions we're running. So if you want to get it free, I would go get it now. All right, let's talk about what's going on with ChatGPT. So like I mentioned, it just got access to iMessage, and this is actually via a plugin. So they originally launched a plugin for ChatGPT, and then they've also added it to ChatGPT Work and Codex. So basically all of the OpenAI, all of the OpenAI tools can access your iMessage if you allow it. Of course, you have to go and allow it. They can sort, it can read, it can draft, and it can send iMessages. Now, there's a bunch of places that my mind goes to immediately. One of them is that there's a ton of tools, one in particular called Send Blue, where like for salespeople and cold outreach, they use these different specific tools that will allow it to basically look like you're texting from an iPhone. And they do this so that when someone gets a text on an iPhone, if it looks like it's coming from an iMessage, they have a higher perceived trust versus if it's a green text message from any other sort of SMS sender. So to me, immediately my mind went there because that's an interesting industry and an interesting business. And now you essentially could automate that, let ChatGPT have access to your iMessage, and you could probably let it have access to your business's quote unquote iMessages that you would have on your computer. And you could get, verified blue bubble text messages for free. So that's like one interesting benefit. But I think a lot of people are concerned about the privacy element. I think even they were kind of OpenAI warned against enabling persistent approval, which is what I usually give ChatGPT and Claude when it's working on something. I'm like, look, you get unlimited approval, just do whatever you need. And it still asks me like if it has to copy and paste a password, it's going to make me do that. But for a lot of the tasks, I don't want it to ask me every 5 seconds, like the direction of the task it's taking. But apparently they're warning in this case, it's not great because then it's going to remove your final chance to review anything that you send. Now, if you're using this to like organize your life and to reply to your grandma, you probably want to, review what's being sent here. But if this is something that you're using for maybe work or maybe kind of like sales and you're, doing high volumes, 100% this is something that I would use. OpenAI told Bloomberg that the plugin runs locally on your device, so it doesn't create an index of all of someone's messages. All of that is happening on your device. A lot of people are worried about the privacy concerns of this. It's, like I mentioned, going to work with Codex and ChatGPT Work. And they had this kind of launch demo. They basically showed ChatGPT drafting some follow-up messages based on the prior day's conversations and searching deep message history. So honestly, that's kind of useful if it's going to go down a deep rabbit hole and get some information from a chat you had a long time ago. ChatGPT can go and do the research for you, which is pretty useful. The thing that I think is interesting here is if Apple had really integrated proper Siri integrations and the quote unquote Apple Intelligence had really worked, none of this would actually be necessary. You'd just be using Apple's onboard, whatever built-in software and tools. But because they didn't do that, now there's kind of these things popping up from Apple. There's a whole bunch of detector apps that are getting very popular as people are having a little bit of backlash against these new smart sunglasses or smart glasses, the Meta Ray-Bans and other Meta glasses that are coming out. And there's an app called Nearby Glasses. It's $3 and you can get it on iOS and Android, and it is at about 100,000 downloads on the Play Store. This just came out in February. There's another one called Zuck Off that launched. It's free on iPhone. It just launched and it is a $10 a year perpetual like price for it. But essentially what these things do is they're actually scanning the Bluetooth of all the surrounding devices. And anytime a device that is, a Meta Ray-Bans, or even if it's something like the Snapchat Spectacles, if there's any of these smart glasses that pop up on their radar, if they hit them with the Bluetooth, they're going to notify you and let you know that, look, there's probably some Meta Ray-Bans around you that could be recording you. So I think a lot of people enjoy, like, are happy with that. Meta installed and then they also unreleased some facial recognition systems on about 50 million phones in June. They actually deleted it because Wired and EFF kind of exposed it and talked about it. So they went and removed that. But at DEF CON 2026, they actually banned smart glasses completely. There's a bunch of schools, courts, restaurants, entertainment venues that have also banned smart glasses. There's another app called Anti-Zuck Smart Glasses Scanner that got to very close to the top of the iPhone charts in July. It was $3. So they're kind of all in that same ballpark. So Ives Jean-Mard, who described himself on GitHub as a no pro developer, warned that detecting Bluetooth LE devices might sometimes just not work as expected and false positives are likely. So to be fair, these aren't always accurate, and I think that might be kind of worrisome for some people if you're laying in bed one night and all of a sudden your phone beeps that there's smart glasses and you look around and there's no one near you. That would be kind of an awkward, false positive. Those do happen. I don't know how likely that is, but it is important to be aware of. There are 1,100 AI lab employees that are asking the US government to help pace automated AI research. There's a bunch of people from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and Meta. Essentially, what they're concerned about in particular is that automated AI research could accelerate beyond human control without coordinated governance. Now, it seems kind of like perhaps a regulatory capture approach because this is OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google and Meta. These are the biggest companies that are gonna, have a lot of budget to spend on this kind of stuff. They have the most money to spend, like hundreds of billions of dollars, or in the case of Anthropic, $1 billion a month just on, data centers for data processing and for running their models. So some of these companies have an insane amount of money. And so when they're going to the government and saying, hey, look, we're worried that like our training is going to accelerate beyond human control, you need to put a bunch of like governance in place. I'm a little bit pessimistic because it feels like they're trying to pull up the ladder behind them. These aren't small companies asking for this. These are the big companies that have big budgets that, theoretically, they're the ones that it could mistakenly have their training model perhaps run and accelerate beyond what they're capable of doing. There's also, I think, Microsoft, Mistral, and Thinking Machines that signed the Pacing the Frontier statement. All of the people were basically asking the government to back an internal effort to build tools that can deliberately slow automated AI research. OpenAI had their CRO, Mark Chen, and chief scientist, Jacob Paco, and also their co-founder, John Schulman, and some others sign it. Anthropic had their co-founder Jack Clark sign it. So there's a lot of people that are working on this right now. The statement follows last week's incident where you had OpenAI escaping the sandbox, hacking Hugging Faces, or maybe the week before. So obviously this is something that people are concerned about. They're like, look, if the AI model's out there hacking things, we don't want it to, progressively get better and better. In my opinion, you can always unplug the machine. I know people probably hate that statement, but at the end of the day, I think that I don't always love a lot of this regulation that comes out. Perhaps some of it's necessary, but it feels like there's a bunch of questions that are not being answered in this. It doesn't specify how pacing would be verified across jurisdictions, how China-based labs would be brought into any coordination framework, and the spoiler alert is they wouldn't be. So all of these US companies are going to decide that, hey, there's this kind of like coordinated framework where we're not going to let the AI model train itself to make itself better and faster. And do you think the Chinese open source models are going to care? Absolutely not. They're going to just run with that. So I think at the end of the day, this probably isn't going to pass, and it probably isn't super viable because of that. But that's just my opinion. Micro One has just hit $500 million in run rate as AI training data demand is surging. This is a company that's only 4 years old. It's a data labeling company, and they grew fivefold in 8 months. So they're right behind Mercer, who is at $2 billion, and Handshake is at $1 billion. All three of those companies are in the same market. Micro One's gross annual run rate grew from about $100 million to $500 million over the last 8 months. That is a 5x growth rate. That is absolutely insane. The net run rate lands between about 150 million and 200 million after 60% to 70% contractor retention. Mercer hit $2 billion in gross annualized revenue this summer, and Handshake reached $1 billion earlier this year. So what's interesting to me is what these companies are actually selling. Off-the-shelf data sets sold to multiple customers are about 80 to 90% gross margin, and Micro One raised their Series A at a $500 million valuation last September, and they might have also recently raised again at a higher mark, although it wasn't exactly disclose. This is actually an area that I'm working in. I'm specifically working with podcasters and people that have video interviews. I have a bunch of companies that I work with where we license data to them, and they'll purchase data sets of essentially people talking in high quality audio and video to help train general purpose. It's not making video or voice clones of people, but it's helping train AI models on how to talk, how conversations happen. They sell this to a number of different AI companies, and it's actually a very lucrative, especially if someone has a big data set of a bunch of recordings or interviews that they've done over the years. It's a really great way to make money from something that you already have. I think a lot of people are realizing this, and it is a massive growing industry. Now, a lot of these companies here aren't just selling the data, but they're also labeling it. They're also processing the data. There's a ton of work that has to go into actually making this data usable for AI companies when they're training their models. And so there's a lot that goes into it. But at the end of the day, it's just an absolutely massive market that is growing very, very quickly. A company called Every has built an AI clone of their editor-in-chief, and they did that using they trained it on 30,000 edits. Their CEO is Dan Shipper, and he says that they have a 30-person team, and they were able to double their headcount while they automated all of their copy desk. They built an agent. Kate Lee was their editor-in-chief, and they built an agent that cloned all of Kate Lee's editing, which is very wild. Their CEO said, "We have an editor-in-chief, Kate Lee, who's fantastic, who I've been trying to automate out of a job for years in an extremely benevolent way." I mean, I think they're benevolent because she has a lot of work to do. But every single collected one of her 300 or of her 30,000 historical edits from being an editor in chief, they were used to train an internal copy editing agent that back tests against her past work. So it will go and edit something, and then it will go check, based off her past work, would this be approved? Would this work? The company doubled, like I mentioned, from about 15 people to about 30 people over the last year. They're running 6 software products, and they also have a daily newsletter. And they have kind of a bundle of, people subscribe to a bunch of their different journalist endeavors. They're able to launch in 2020, and they haven't raised a lot of venture funding from that. But I just think this is an interesting place. I obviously have AIChatDaily.com, which is my own news site where you can get deep dives on all of this content that I'm talking about here. I have articles breaking down way more information on all of these stories. So if you're ever interested in getting that into your inbox, there's actually a newsletter on AIChatDaily.com where you can go subscribe and get all of these stories and deep dives into your inbox as a newsletter. But I use a very similar process where I have, AI agents that are editors, writers, reviewers. We go and source content to write about. And I think so much of the news process, there's so many ways to help automate real people that are doing real work in this area to help speed up some of the slower parts. And I mean, in the case of this one poor editor who's trying to edit for 30 people, I'm sure she's thrilled to get a little bit of her time back. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning into the podcast today. Make sure if you're interested in getting access to the AI Hustle School community. Once it reaches 1,000 users, we're going to make it paid. It's free to join right now. So if you're interested, go check it out. It's linked in the description, how to grow and scale your business using AI tools. And I'll catch you guys all in the next episode.